about question number 1 of the quiz. So what you have to remember is that this one is a cross product. So what this is saying is location, cross product airport, cross product works. So because of that, it will remember the cross product. It takes every row from this table. So we have one join condition out here. So this is a join condition, location.c number. So you are joining, which one did I do? Oh, sorry, I did the wrong one. This one, sorry. Where location.c number is equal to airport.c number. So we're looking at location.c number is 100. So we take this one, and then you join it with this table. So we have London, we have church. Okay, and then we are connecting this to the works table, but there is no join condition out here connecting. So we don't have something that says airport.c number is equal to works.c number. So we don't have that condition out here. So because of that, you are picking up James and you're connecting with both the rows out here. So you're going to do both because we don't have that join condition. So that is the reason that you get 2 lines in the output. Is that clear? So that's the thing you have to remember, is that when you have this out here, it does not mean a join, it means a cross product. So when you do that, you have to explicitly put this joining thing. So you have to explicitly do this. If you don't do that, it'll connect every row from the table that matches up. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, I misread the table.
Yeah, so that's one. So anything else on this quiz?
I have a question on the last one. Number 4.
Oh, this, just want to increase the volume. Yeah, so this is the last one is actually, this query is identical to this query, in terms of output. So what it's doing is that, so if you look out here, the nested loop, the nested one out here. So it's saying select all the rows from this second, from W2, where W1.a number is greater than W2.a number, right? So what happens out here, so let's just pick up, I'll just pick up the first 2 rows. Okay, let's say, let me take, so let me pick up these 2. Let's pick up James and let's pick up Mary. Okay, so first let's take James from worker 1. So when you pick up James, his A number is 7, right? So you want to find everyone who has how come James is not there on the previous answer? Just one second. From worker dot A number is greater than, I should have.
Yeah, number 4 is
right. I should have
correct there, but it's
where A number, W.A number is greater than W dot, yes. Oh, just one second. Now I got confused a bit. So let's take James. Okay, let's just take James and just work through it. So you have James out here. So James is, it's a pity I've got to keep scanning through. So what we are saying is, it would have been good if I could do it side by side instead of having to keep scrolling back and forth. So we have w1.worker, so that's James. Where w1.worker in, so now you take w2.worker where w1.a number, so w1.a number is 7. That's better. Okay, w1.a number is 7, so we're going to look where 7 is greater than, so let's pick up row by row out here. So we're going to take, is 7 greater than 6? So in this case, 7 is greater than 6. So, so James is going to appear out here. So in the second set, James is going to appear. Then the next one is Greg. He'll appear. So James himself, oh, sorry, Bob has to appear. Oh. Okay, so oh, I seem to have a brain freeze on this one right now. Where w1.worker in select w2.worker from works where w1.a number is greater. Okay, yeah. So we have Greg, but we don't have James. Then we have Mary. Because Mary is, let me see, 7 is greater than, I think I made a mistake on this one. We have Bob, Greg, James does not appear because James was 7. Then you have Mary 7, that will not appear. When a.a number, Mary 8 is not going to appear. Then we have Rick. So essentially in the first one, James is not going to appear. So it's actually workers who work in exactly one airport, that's what I should add. So James is going to appear out here. Then we have the next one is, I think so I made a mistake on this one on what I wrote down as the options. So we have James, then let's pick up Mary. So we have Mary. So again, Mary's a number is first you pick up 7. So so when you, again for 7, you're not going to get Mary, but you'll get where, yeah, let me just look at this one because I think I made a mistake on the choices that I gave out here. So let me just go back and just look at this one. Okay, one more time. I made a mistake on this one, I think. So I will go back, and if I made a mistake on the choices, I'll give everyone credit. Okay, is that okay? Because I think I made a choices on the options. I should have looked and said workers who work in exactly one airport too. So I'll go back and check this out. So sorry about that. So
The reason I was confused on this one is because you don't join on the A number or for the second select. You don't have the condition that the workers are the same, I mean.
are you talking about question number 4?
Yeah.
Or question number
What
1?
Number 4. What I meant to say is that you don't make sure that the worker is the same worker. So it's any worker that's less than any other.
Yeah.
So it's every worker. Every worker appears.
Yeah, so let me just look at this one. I might have made a mistake on the choices I gave. And if I made a mistake, I'll put it out there, because I suddenly looked at it right now. When I'm looking at it, either I have a brain freeze where I'm not seeing something, or I actually made a mistake in the choices. So where it should have been workers who work in exactly one airport. So I just want to go back and think about it. So
the way the selection is, it would list all workers because the only one that wouldn't be less than would be Rick, but there's 2 Ricks, so there's always.
Yeah, that was the conclusion I came to as well.
Yeah.
No. See, because Let's take James. It will not be all workers, by the way. So let me just put that, because let's just take James, just go with James right now.
But there's someone that has a higher ANO than James, so James would end up being listed.
No, who work in, so where w1.worker, where w1.worker, and so, but you have this match condition where w1.a number, so James A number is 7, right? So this one, so I just want to go with James right now. So we'll just look at this. So w1.a number, if you take for James, so James A number, w1.a number is equal to 7, right? So
Okay.
for now, so we're looking where James an element. So let's look at the set just for James, sorry. Is James an element? That's what this is saying of, so let's look at the second set out here. So I'm now looking at the subquery, okay? So we are going first one. So we are looking at, is 7 greater than 6? We're going line by line on this one. So is 7 greater than 6? It's true. So select W2 worker. So this is going to be Bob. So for James, I'm only looking at James right now. I'm going to remove Mary from here. Okay. So then let's look at line number 2. So is Greg so W1.a number is greater than 3. So it's going to get Greg, right? So then we go to James, but 7 is not greater than 7. So James' name is not appearing there. So then we go to Mary's first line, that will not appear. Mary's second line will not appear. So Rick, yes, Rick will appear. Sally will appear. Tim will appear here. So if you take so what we are saying is James. So when you go for the first line out here, so if I'm going with James out here, James is not an element of this one.
I see
James'
it now.
name
Yep.
is not appearing on that one.
Yeah.
So that's what I meant. So James is not going to appear. So that's what I was saying. Instead of saying workers who work in more than one airport, I should have written the right answer was workers who work in exactly one airport. So that's the mistake I made, on the choices. Because if you look at people who work in exactly one airport, they are not going to appear. But people who work in multiple airports, so that's so I did give it correctly. So James is
did,
not
yep.
going to appear. So I was correct. So sorry, the brain freeze. That's right. So James is not going to be an element of the set. So similarly, you won't get Bob will not be an element. Greg will not be an element. Then who else is working only on a single airport? Yes. So that's right. So my answer is correct. I'm sorry. So this is correct. So James, Bob, and Greg will not be coming out. But now let's take someone who works in multiple airports. So is that part clear why James, Bob, and Greg will not appear?
Yeah.
No, this is the part that I was asking about earlier, because you're not joining that that the worker's name has to be the same, so you could compare James to someone else later, like in a different cross product.
No, but see, that's the thing I wanted to, I've been stalking. Actually, it's a good thing I had this kind of, I did, so this is correct. So that's what I want to say. Whenever you have these kind of queries in and exist, it goes like this. It goes, it's like a nested loop. It goes from for I going from 1 to, so it goes row by row on the table 1. So it's W1. And then it goes for J going from 1 to W2. So it's taking row number 1 from the first table, that is W1, and then it takes every row from the second table to see whether it matches or not through. So that's what it's doing. So therefore, it's not joining or anything like that. That's the difference between, oh, just a minute. So this query, so this is the query which joins the previous one. Oh, this one. So that's what I meant. This and this are identical. When I was creating the quiz, I was trying to do a query where something that I did using join, I was going to do it using in. So these two queries are really identical, but the way they work, when you do this is the case where you actually join and do. Out here, it's a nested I loop, and the joining, if at all, there's no join condition, but the comparison that we are doing is on this area, this one. So this is a comparison that we're looking at. So, so that's why James will not appear. So on the other hand, let's look at Mary. So we have, so now I did James. So now I'm going to look at, is Mary, let's look at another line. Mary. So let's look at Mary. If you pick Mary, so now let W1, let that be where you're picking up line number with Mary. So when you pick up Mary, and now you look at the second table. So Mary's is, let's pick up Mary with 7, so Mary has, with this one. So again, you look out here. So we have is 7. So we'll have Bob. So when you have, so we are going to look at W2.a number is equal to 7 first. Okay, so when you look at W2.a number is equal to 7, you're again going to get Bob. 7, yeah, so the second table will not have Bob. So is Mary, so is Weber is in the W1.a number is greater than W2.a number. So W1.a number is 6, so 6 is not greater. Then you look at 3, is 3 greater? 3 is not greater. Is James 7? 7 is not greater. Is Mary 7 greater? No. But is Mary 8 greater? Yes. So Mary is greater. So we have, and then you have Rick is not greater. Sally, yes, Sally 8 is greater. And Tim 11 is greater. So this one, and this one are greater. So Mary is an element of the second set. So Mary will appear on the output out here. So actually the output for this will be exactly the same as this output. So Mary, Rick, Sally, and Tim will appear in the output. So, so the only way of doing problems like this is doing the loop condition. You have to pick row by row from the first table and see whether what is the subset that comes up, and see whether if it's true or false, whether the W1.worker is an element or not an element of the subset. So for each row, the set that gets formed out here is different. Okay, so I'm sorry, I may have done this a bit confusing because I thought that I made a mistake on this problem, but I'm glad I didn't make a mistake because that's why it's kind of a bit tricky. SQL queries are a bit tricky. You have to sometimes, even though they look simple, sometimes you have to go through it carefully. So does that make sense? I'm sorry if it confused you, but we all make mistakes. So any other?
For the,
yeah, go ahead.
For the second select, is the end set like the union of all the sets for every row, or what?
Can you just, okay, so let's look at the Mary. You'll have to, I didn't understand your question, so maybe you'll have to just say it in a different manner.
Yeah. Like, because we got 2 different sets when we look at 2 different rows. So
Yeah.
for
every row, it will be a different set. For every row, you're going to, the subset will be different.
Yeah.
Yes.
So when we are looking for all the workers that we're going to include in the first select query, are we going to use like a union of all the subsets or what?
Oh, no, not a union. You have to go for each one. So what you have to do is you have to go for each one separately. So it's not a union of all the subsets. For each one, the set is different. It's not a union. So again, I think I did confuse everyone. So let me just, again, let's start from let's just pick up Bob. For everyone has a different set. Okay, so let's really let's look at W1. So let me just, so W1, let's say we are going to start with the very first element, Bob, from W1. And then W2, you have to look for all the rows. So you have to look from for the entire table. So we look at Bob, which is 6. So W1 dot a number is equal to 6. Okay, so that's the so then you're looking, is Bob an element? So the checking is Bob an element of, and now you have to find this, you have to find the second set for Bob. So the second set for Bob is all the cases where the condition we are going to look at is this one, W1 dot a number greater. So you look at Bob, so is 6 greater than 6? No, so Bob does not appear. So we look line by line out here. Then you look at Greg. Is 3 greater than 6? Is 3 less than 6? Because W1 dot a number. So is 3 less than 6? So that is true. So Greg is going to appear in the set.
Yeah, I see now.
Okay, and so that's how you keep going. So is James is less, so James will not appear for him. Mary is not going to appear. Rick will appear. Rick 1, Rick 2, then Sally is going to appear. No, Sally won't appear because Sally is 6 and 8. And Tim won't appear. So for Bob's subset is Greg and Rick. So is Bob an element of Greg and Rick? No, he's not. So Bob will not be there in the output, right? So that's Bob. Then you have to look for the next. So now, so we find that, okay, Bob is not an element, so he won't be there in the output. So then you go to the next person in this, then you go to W2 is equal to Greg. And then again and W2 dot a number is equal to 3. And then you have to check, is Greg an element of, and then you have to find a subset. So again, you have to go line by line through this, and you find that you'll find the only people, the subset for Greg is going to be Rick, and that's it. But Greg is not an element of Rick, so Greg is not going to appear. So that's how you find that the only people who will appear are the people who work in multiple airports. Okay, so does anyone have any question? Did you understand this? I'm glad in a way that I made the mistake because, it made me spend some time and explain this, because that's the most important thing to remember, is that like and exist and all, in and exist, they all go by the principle of this, for I going from 1 to W1 and J going from 1 to W2, so they are nested loops. They are not, the way they are done internally is very different from the, the cross product and the join. So is there anything else on the quiz? So I didn't make a mistake, which I'm glad. Because sometimes in your
Thanks for clearing that up.
questions, you make mistakes. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just saying thanks for clearing that up.
Oh yeah, but thanks for asking the question. I think that is important to do it. It's good to understand, sometimes when you write query, because with SQL, any assignment that's given, you can play around and you'll get all these outputs, but that doesn't mean, often we sometimes don't really understand what's happened. We're just trying to kind of figure it out through. So this is good, actually. Okay, so if there's nothing else, I'm going to go back to exist. And you're right. So here too, I was showing that looping condition out here. So I was going through this one query, which was list social security number of employees who do not work on any project in department number 4. And this was the first one we did, was list social security number of employees who work on a project in department 4. So I showed you how to do, earlier I've done these queries using the cross product. So now I did it using in. So now I'm doing it using exist. And really though, I'm doing all this because I want you to understand how to do these queries, how to use these operators, because even though a lot of queries can be done, say just using cross product or join, Sometimes they're simpler and easier to read if you use them, if you write those queries using in or exist. So it's important that you know how all of these operators work. So I showed you how to do in the last class. I showed when you do, so this is the easiest way, in some way not doing use. So select SSN from employee where not exists, and then I'm writing query one out here. So I've done this query exactly like the way we did the inquiry. So I also wanted to show you, so this one, if you look at it from the programming viewpoint, this query is written as a nested loop with two nestings. So for I going from 1 to number of employees, that's this one, that's the outer loop. And then the inner loop is going from J, going from 1 to the number of elements in the cross product of the emp table and the, sorry, for the cross product of the works table and the project table. So that's the inner loop. So the same thing, you can do it with 3 loops. So that's what I wanted to show on the third one. And I think that's when we ran out of time. So let me just finish off this last one. So here, so we have where not exists, select star from works, where SSN is equal to ESSN and exists. And then the last one is select star from project. And P number is equal to then you have, I hope I got the, I don't know whether, so I don't remember what the works table used, PNO or P number, I think just PNO. So let me just write this, where PNO should be is equal to, okay. So this third query is identical to the one above it. It's just that I wrote it down as 3 nested loops instead of 2 nested loops. So I didn't do a join. If I'd done a join like I've done out here, then you only had 1, but you could, this one does exactly the same thing. Does any questions on this part? You get it? Okay, so the whole reason for doing this anyway, this particular example, was I wanted to go over this query. So this is, so when we were doing the in, and that's how we motivated the in statement. So there was this particular query, query 3, which is list employees who work in all projects controlled by department 4. So this was the reason I motivated the whole exist thing, because I wanted to show you how to do this particular query. So we want to list employees who work in all projects controlled by department number 4. And department number 4 had 2 projects, 10 and 30. And there were only 2 employees who worked in all. So I just want to briefly bring up the company database. Just briefly, I'll pull it away because I find it difficult to write. Okay, so if you look at the works on table out here, the only 2 employees who work in both 10 and 30 are, we have 9879 works in both 10 and 30, and so does 9998. So these are the only 2 people in the works on table that work in all projects that's run by Department 4. And I did not say that they should work only in projects controlled by Department 4, because if you look at the table, 9879. I guess here, in this particular database, they only work in these 10 and 30. But really, all I really wanted was that I wanted to pick up people who work in all projects controlled by Department 4. They could work in other projects too. It doesn't so happen in this particular database, but in this particular database instance. But really what I want is that I just want these 2 employees to be printed out for the sample database. So how to do this query? So now this particular query, it's a hard, tough query. And in order for me to explain this, if I just wrote down the SQL query right now, you are not going to understand. That SQL query is not going to make any sense. So I'm going to have to first explain the way to answer this query. I have to do the relational algebra part of it first or the relational calculus part of it before I can actually write down the query. So thing is, what are we trying to do out here? So let's say this is the employee table. Okay, so the employee table has different rows, X1, let's call it X2, X3, and so on. So these are all the tuples or the rows in the employee table. And then let's pick up the very first element in this employee table, X1. So the very first row, which is I think John or somebody. Now, John works on some projects. So let's look at the second set. Okay, so we'll call this set A. And A has, I'm just going to call it the generic name X's. So X's project. Okay, so that's X1, X2, X3. So I'll just call it, yeah, so it's easier to say, okay, let the set AI be Xi's projects. Okay, so we'll go row by row. So you have set A1, A2, A3, and so on. So AI is, so this will be all the projects that, so this could be Z1, Z2, Z3, Z4. So let's say that, each employee works in 0 or more projects. And you can find this in the works on table. So this is really a subset of the works on table. Okay, and then we have a third set. Okay, so the set is B. So let this be the set B, and this B is Department 4's projects. So let's say Department 4, and out here I'm just going to say it's Y1, Y2, and Y3. So these are all Department 4's. I'll put this in a row just to make it. Okay, and then this one would be, let's say X10. So we have 3 sets. We have the employee. It has every row from the employee table. We have the set B, which is Department 4's projects. And then we have a bunch of sets A1, A2. So out here we should have sets, there should be A1, A2, and up to A10, because for each employee works on 0 or more projects. So some of it could be an empty set and others could be there. Okay, so what are we, so we want to list employees who work in all projects controlled by Department 4. So we want to list all the employees. So in Department 4 has 3 projects, Y1, Y2, and Y3. So we want to list employees who work on Y1, Y2, and Y3. They must have. So what we want to list is, so we will list Xi is an element of M will be listed if y1, y2, y3 are all elements of AI. Does that make sense what I said? So that's what this query is asking, is xi element of M will be listed if y1, y2, and y3 are all elements of AI. Okay, so so that's what we want. That's what a query should do. So is this clear to everyone? Okay, if anyone didn't understand, please ask. Well, this is actually a very, very difficult query. So I want to make sure you understand this query. So another way of saying this is print xi if there does not exist a y element of B such that y is not an element of AI. So does this make sense to you, what I just wrote? Okay, so here, what I'm really saying what I just said out here. It's in a different, this, I'm saying exactly the same thing, but in a slightly different manner. So what I'm saying is that print xi, so if there should never be an element, so that's what I'm saying, there should never be an element y that is an element of this set, but it is not an element of this set. That's what I'm saying. So I'm really saying the earlier thing, but in a different manner. I'm saying that, you should make sure that if every element out here, there should never be an element. So for example, I should not have an element out here. Say if y1 is here and y1 is not here, if you don't have y1 out here, then if it's, so there is no y1 on this part, then that's then that should not happen. So is there anyone who has, I'm going to assume otherwise that everyone understood what I just wrote, this statement out here, because that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to convert this statement into SQL. Okay, so let me write it down in SQL now. So we're going to select SSN from employee where not exists select star from project where D number is equal to 4 and P number not N. Select P number from works on where ESSN is equal to SSN. Okay, so this is the query. And the only way you really understand this query is if you look at this. So this green one out here, this is a set B. That's the select star from project where D number is equal to 4. So this is referring to set B and P number not in. So this is the B. And then where P number is not in is this part. So this is the set AI. So just take a look at it and see if you understood this. I would say that this is one of the most, this kind of query, wherever you get questions where people, the queries where they ask you to find all, you know, if you understand this, you will be able to do any query where you get questions that ask you to list everything, all. So, but you need to understand this. So another way of doing this, so this was using the not in. You could also have, so another way of doing this one is, you could have said print xi if there does not exist y element of b and not exists y element of AI. So it's the same thing. So what you're saying is, you know, if you have an element where the element is a set element of B, but it's not an element of A1, that's really what I'm saying. So I would write down this query. If I convert it into SQL, again, I'm just converting this into SQL. Directly, I'm converting the relational algebra query. I'm directly converting it into SQL. So it's again select SSN from M where not exists. And so here, where earlier I did and P number not in, I'm just going to say not exists and not exists. Okay, so again, I just converted the earlier one. So this again set B, and this is set AI. Okay, so I hope you understood this. And again, like I said, you know, just, you know, there are some queries where it's very difficult to write it directly into SQL. It's much easier to think of it in relational algebra or relational calculus. And then convert the relational calculus into a SQL query. And definitely this is an example of first doing it in a math form and then converting it to SQL. So I hope you understood it. And I want to write a question and just see if you can at least think about this question. So for this particular query, by the way, you will get the answer is going to be 9879 and 9998, because those are the only two in the company database that work in all projects controlled by Department 4. So now my question is, what is the output when, oh, so I want you to, so this is the boundary condition. Remember when you write programming, you know, usually when your teachers check it, they check for boundary conditions. So this is one of those things. So what if you were doing this query for some department which had no projects? If suppose there were no projects in department number 4, what would the output be for this query? So I'm not going to tell you what the output is. This is one of those questions in your lab. I have given you company.sql file. I want you to try it out. But before you try it out, I want you to think and figure out what output would you get when you did this query if there were no projects in department 4. And then, I want you to try it out, and you'll see that the answer is not going to be correct for this boundary condition. This particular query, these two queries, they'll work correctly as long as there is at least one project in department 4. But if there are no projects in department 4, the output of these queries is going to be incorrect. So as an exercise, what I want you to do is that how would you write this query that will satisfy the boundary condition. So the answer you want, if there are no projects in department 4, you should get output should be empty. You should get a null set as the output, right? Because there are no projects in department 4, so there is you want to get an empty output on this. So how would you write the query so that if there are no projects in this department 4, the output would give you a null set, empty output. It's a very simple fix, actually. It's very easy to address the boundary condition, and I want to leave that as an exercise for you. Okay, so does anyone have any questions? Yeah, so I have done, I think I've covered the in and the exist. So I've done nested queries and I've done the cross product. So the next operator I want to do is the join operator, because we haven't really done the join so far. What we did is cross product and select. So in the next class, I want to do the join operator. So there's no point to starting it off today. So I'll start the join in the next class. So does anyone have any questions? Okay, so if you don't have any questions, then I'll just end the class and